good. Oh my gosh. Go ahead.
Okay. Is it going to be okay that you are in vertical and I'm in horizontal? Is that going to be a problem?
No, it'll be fine.
Okay.
That's usually
Oh,
how it is.
oh, okay,
So
cool.
I
Okay, I
have
didn't notice.
yeah, it's something I noticed and I don't know, I just need to change the setting.
Oh, okay. I
So, like
was
I
just
just
curious.
needed to like finish the process of realizing that I did fully go through the anchor process.
Right, right, right. Well, it happens. It happens. It's all good.
Yeah. No,
How
but
are you?
it automatically like does kind of the black panels on the side. So
Gotcha.
when I don't think it looks too bad, hopefully. If it
Okay.
does, let me know, actually. Tell me.
I mean, okay. I didn't know. I haven't seen it. I just listened to the show. I don't actually like watch the video.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I figured too, anyway. So anybody who does. So,
Yeah.
but I want to say thank you again too for I'm gonna break the elephant in the room here, but last time we tried to record, it did not record. So,
Right.
or it didn't send it to my phone and that doesn't really work. So I just want to thank you for doing a take two.
I'm really glad. And I know we talked about this, but like I mean, I'm not glad that happened. Obviously that sucked, but I do think like having a take two can sometimes be interesting because we might go a little deeper on stuff that we only like scratched the surface on before.
Definitely. And it pushed me to face that situation.
Yeah.
Like I was, even though I know you, like I was just like, part of me was relieved that I knew you, and the other part was feeling even embarrassed because I knew you. You
Right.
know what I mean? So
Sure.
it definitely forced me to face that like situation and just pay more attention. So,
I
but
mean, we've all done it, right? Like it's just whole part of the process.
yeah, no, and I agree though. I did listen to your science fiction episode today.
You did prep work. Okay.
Yes, I did. I was like, I want to come. If I do nothing else, Kara, when I make a mistake, I am so like I'm gonna make it better that I do it to a fault.
Oh, okay.
But now I just do that where I want to do that.
Good. I was gonna say you still get to put some boundaries there.
Yeah, I get to choose
Yes, right.
where I put that effort. So, but yeah, so I guess before I don't know, I really enjoyed hearing your background, going a little bit deeper when we did that last time. So I do want to go ahead and let you do that again.
Sure.
And just kind of share where you grew up, just the base, those basics. So yeah,
Yeah.
take it away.
Well, we should probably like I can I introduce myself or will you do that
Yeah,
or
that is
okay.
what I meant by that.
Okay, the whole thing. Okay. So my name is Kara Espy. I am a fiction editor and a podcaster, and I live in Vegas currently, but I just moved here from Kansas City, where I grew up and where I know Raquel from, which I don't know. Do you reveal location? We can cut that out.
I
Um,
have, unfortunately, too
okay.
much, but I live in a more populated enough area that I say
Yeah.
just don't do it because I have survived a lot and I'm ready to put my skills into action if needed. So I'm just putting that out there. I know I don't wish anything upon myself. That's all I'm saying. But if you
Okay.
do, no, I will try to defend myself.
Yes. So, okay,
Okay.
cool. I'm following you. So, anyways, yeah. So I grew up in Kansas City, Missouri, and I was homeschooled, which was an interesting choice that my parents made, and it had, I think, positive and negative effects on my life. But one positive was I was an obsessive reader. I learned to read very early, and um, I was reading complicated, like I was reading above my grade level very early. And I was reading, my dad was reading Lord of the Rings and C.S. Lewis and that kind of stuff to us as a family when we were kids. And then I was reading that kind of stuff, by myself when I was like 10, 11, 12. And I was also writing. I started writing really terrible, embarrassing Lord of the Rings fan fiction. It's real bad. We talked about it a little bit on my podcast. It's very sad.
Yeah.
But that is like every person who's like a writer or an editor, like that's part of it, right? Because it's
Yeah.
practice.
Did you do that during church, by the way? Because what we did is we would like have a notebook because we were forced
Uh-huh.
to be there, so
Right.
late at nights. And me, Michelle, Amy, Denise, sometimes like, I don't know, whoever would participate, honestly, we'd sit in that back row and we would pass the notebook around and like write a story. Like they were
Yeah.
always like teenage romance, though. I mean, it was always just like,
Oh, yes. All our fan fiction was about Legolas and how obsessed we were with him. That's what it was. Like it was our outlet for us to get out these weird sexual things that like not it wasn't sexual, of course, but it was, when you're 11, 12, and that's kind of
sexuality. I mean,
yeah, you're just kind of like, oh, I'm actually noticing something about other people. And yeah, and we wrote like 10 me and my friend, we wrote 10 chapters of this fan fiction like back and forth, but it was over email because we didn't have the benefit of going to church together. Or well, I don't know if I would call it a benefit. She went to another church that had a youth group, and she was kind of dragged there by her parents and had a very similar experience to me growing up in that too. So we're kind of a little bonded over that.
yeah.
But yeah, that's where I started with like reading and writing, but then right at that same time, like 12, 13, I just got it in my head that God wanted me to be an actress. Like I was raised very religious and told that God had a plan for my life, and my job was to find out what that plan was and to follow it to the letter. And so somehow it was like, all right, I'm supposed to be an actress. I have heard the messages from God. I'm supposed to be an actress. And I really held on to that for a long time for a lot of reasons. Um, but it influenced a lot of my decisions to where I changed focus. Like I knew I loved storytelling, but I thought I wanted to tell stories through film. I wanted to work in movies and TV and be a witness in Hollywood, but also really like I just wanted to work on like Lord of the Rings and like stuff
Yeah.
like that. Like, that's the kind of stuff I wanted to do.
So you didn't want to do like the Christian-based movies?
I hate Christian-based movies. I
That's all I wanted.
and
You
I
wanted to do like Lord of the Rings, Narnia, like Christian adjacent, but not.
yes, that's exactly what it is because there was a long time where Christian media and like Christian adjacent media and non-Christian or secular media weren't actually that different, like in terms of quality. And something happened in the last like 20 years, like where literally like the Christian media industry, like the brain has like dropped on the
I can
ground.
tell
And
you
it
what
just,
happened, but that's for another podcast.
I'm sure I know a little bit about what happened with the music industry. I don't know about the rest of it, but
Same,
yeah, we could,
same,
huh?
same, same.
Similar, same. Yeah, of
Yeah.
course. I mean, like you said, we could have a whole podcast
Yeah.
about all of that stuff. But yeah, so no, I was supposed to go witness to the heathens in Hollywood. That was my calling.
Yeah.
So that was in my head kind of as like a young teen. And I went and joined an acting class and was there for actually a couple of years. It was a homeschooling, it was an acting thing for homeschoolers, and we did theater productions, and it was all homeschoolers because I was very insulated in this kind of Christian homeschooler church community. Like those are my only outlets, really. So of course I was super drawn to storytelling and reading and all that. Um, but I also did love performing and I liked being in front of people and I kind of got that rush. So it wasn't totally off base, but I really kind of had a bad experience in that environment. And it kind of scared me and shook my confidence. Um, and the experience was just, it was one of those places where the person in charge has favorites, and it's very apparent who those favorites are, and those are the people who get opportunities. Um, and it turns out that's how the whole fucking world works,
Yeah.
unfortunately. But learning that
Mhm.
at 14, when you're like a lonely homeschool kid, is really, it was hard.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I really went from there to like, well, maybe I'm not going to be an actress right away, but maybe I'll get discovered. And so I just kind of cycled, and I thought I was going to do animation, and I thought I was going to do maybe like directing or something like that. And I actually went to college for like film and media. And my degree's technically in communications, but it was a film and media emphasis. And I took all these filmmaking classes. And then I spent 3 years working as a production assistant for reality TV shows, which if you listen to my podcast, I kind of tell
Yeah.
all of this
I've
on
had
there.
so many questions about, just because I am so curious. I want to know the worst story.
Of the
The worst.
reality TV show?
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, there's so many. Okay. Do you want the less maybe controversial one or maybe the more controversial one? Because there's one
I
that's more like,
love controversy, baby.
okay, so I was on this show, and I'm not going to say what the name of the show was, but this was it would have been like 2013, 2014 maybe ish. Um, and it was a show about a group of transgender women who were living in the town that I was in at the time. And it was just a really short little docu-series for this nothing channel that, is like on cable somewhere. And I think this show does exist out there. I've never been able to watch it. I'm apparently in it. Um, but I remember the craziest thing was there was a couple that were going through, one of the partners was transitioning and was, now a woman. And the cisgendered woman partner was like devastated, like really struggling. And they let us bring cameras into their like counseling sessions. So we're like literally, they are in there, and then we're all like in this separate room, and there's all these cords running out of this counseling session, and we're watching and listening to this incredibly personal, private, counseling session where this woman is breaking down because she doesn't understand what's happening to her world, and her partner is also can't explain, what's happening to her. And then they topped it all off by having like they had a funeral for the trans partner's like former self, which I
Right.
guess is the choice that some people choose to do. I don't know enough about this to know whether that's a controversial thing or not. I'm sure it's individual
Right.
for
Well,
everybody
some
who does.
people have their own funerals for just a
Yeah,
midlife
exactly.
crisis. So,
So it was that kind of thing. But it just like the whole time, like, so we're, and again, but they're doing this for the camera, right? And this poor woman is having this very sincere personal emotional experience that we're just intruding on, and it just
mhm,
made me so uncomfortable.
mhm.
um but it's not funny, but like, well, I am on that show. So a lot of times these productions are super like low budget, of course, right? So if they need an extra in a background for something, they will toss you in there. So
Okay.
I'm in a scene in a salon getting like a pedicure where I'm supposed to be making like the stink eye at a couple of the cast members so that they can so that they can make it look like they're being discriminated against in this salon.
Oh my gosh.
So don't believe what you see on
Oh, I
TV.
don't.
It's
I
a
don't.
lie.
Especially like podcasting now and just the internet, guys. Come on. Information is out
Yeah,
there, but like it is so interesting just from some of the other podcasts I've listened to hear the behind the scenes, the background, the like internal back end, part
yeah,
of these shows, even just from the actors themselves that are real people playing themselves.
right.
And um And it really is interesting because I know that there is the writer strike happening right now, but I know there is a brewing, I think, reality actor strike. They're kind of saying, hey, like we want to have more say in things
Whoa.
like our rights, because really now if you sign up for a reality show, you're literally, don't even question if that you're not signing your whole life away for whatever time they've designated, filming. Like
Right.
everything is theirs, that you
Right.
just handed your life over to them. So, and you're not going to get paid most likely very much at all. So
Oh, not at
if
all.
anything, not at all. Like there's
Yeah.
big time shows on like big networks where those people are not getting paid. So
Yeah.
yeah. Anyways, that was a digression. I was so curious when I heard your podcast today. That was the first question that came. I was like, I want to know some juice, but some, I don't want to use that word, but just I want to know some news. But um, so okay, so what kind of happened, I guess, after you did that for some time, right?
Yes. Yeah, I did that for a few years. And it was always kind of like part-time while I was also like delivering pizza. Because I just again, like I couldn't like circling, I couldn't land on something that I wanted to do. Like, and people kept asking me, like, what do you want to do? Like, you're really good at this. You could go, like, you should move to LA and do this like full time because you could really do it. But and I was like, yeah, I know. And I always like wanted to go and made plans to go, but it just never got there and it just never really felt right. And and then after, a while, I just got sick of it and burnt out. And I was like talking to people who had been in the business for a lot longer and in my opinion were a lot more successful than me. And they seemed really burnt out and unhappy with their lives. I mean, of course, that's not everybody that works in Hollywood or in, media or whatever, but it's a very difficult road. And I mean, it's not like the road I'm on now is any less difficult, but I have a completely different feeling about it.
Right.
But it just takes so long to get there. So, anyways,
Anything takes work. It doesn't matter. Like I have a full-time job,
right,
and that takes 40 plus hours of my week of work.
right,
So everything takes work. And, for financial reasons, if you have to be with a corporate whatever, place or, for a time,
right.
that's fine, but just know that that is your time and you're doing that amount of work. You can, so yeah, I think we'll probably get into more of that. I think we're leading into
Yeah.
that. So go ahead.
Well, yeah. So I was burnt out and just looking for something more stable. So I could maybe just like figure out what I was wanting to do with my life. And I ended up getting a job, a communications job, basically working for a school district. And I was working in technology, which I'm very familiar with computers and comfortable with technology and stuff. So it was a really good fit for me. And I was originally hired to make training videos. So this guy that I had known from years before hired me to make training videos for his team. But then I quickly got handed off to this other manager who didn't know what to do with me. And he's like, "What are you good at?" And I was like, "Well, I'm good at writing." And he's like, "All right, we're gonna do that." And so I took over most of the communication for the department, and I was writing emails and copy for the website, and you know, doing a lot of technical guides for how to uh, use a specific program, or how do you sign into this thing. And I was making those things for a lot of like the older folks that worked at that district that needed technology help. I kind of
Yeah.
started taking over that area.
That explains your patience with me during our session. So thanks. 'Cause
It's true. Like that job taught me, I mean, I already have had to have patience for a lot of my life. Um, but yeah, I definitely
I'm
okay,
sorry.
that sounded really dark. I just
Right there. Sorry.
I just I just mean because my mom is blind, and so
Yes.
It takes
No,
longer.
I totally
So I know you
felt
know that, but
that.
everybody
Like,
else is like, what is she talking about?
no, for very legit and valid reason. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. So I try to be a patient person. I am not always, but yes, working in that job, you had to be extremely patient. You had to be extremely good at breaking things down to their like most basic level so that people could kind of get it at the level that they're at, you know? Um,
Which was
and I was good
probably
at
a skill you hadn't realized you even could tap into just from
right.
growing up, like you said, with a mother who was blind, having to break things down conceptually versus visually. So, you
Right.
know,
And having like an alternative perspective on the way that somebody might learn about something.
right.
Yeah, it was definitely an asset. So I ended up taking on more and more of those training responsibilities until I was literally in front of people and using my like public speaking and theater skills from when I was a teenager to be able to communicate this information. And so it was a really, really good, like it was like stable and it was boring, just the most boring stuff ever, you know. But there was a lot of skill development happening under the surface that has like really kicked my rear into gear in ways that I should not have anticipated when I took that job, you know? So I did that role for about 5 years, and then I was offered a promotion of sorts into a project manager role, which is a totally different and not something that I ever thought that I would want to do. Um, but I was sick of what I was doing, and I was like, I need something different, and this is an opportunity that I know I can get, and maybe I'll get something out of it. So, I got that job in May of 2020. So
During the pandy.
during the pandy. Yeah, and it sucked. Like it was just the
Yeah.
worst. It was just and I knew it was going to be hard. Of course I knew because it was a position that hadn't existed in the organization before. And so I was going to have to basically carve out my role and figure out what I was doing. And also like build a project management office from the like ground up. So like try and like put together procedures and things like that. And I wasn't on my own. I had my manager, you know, kind of helping me, and I had other people on my team. I had a really wonderful team of people around me. Um, it was
But
still
in
just
hindsight, it seems like having to build that on your own, like you said, those unknown skills you were acquiring.
oh yes. Oh my God, yes. Well, and that's the thing. Like it was a sucky job, but it pushed me a lot. And which is good, but I couldn't do it for very long. And
Right.
and with everything else that happened, like, you know, with the pandemic, my life was in complete turmoil for like 2 years straight. Like on top of the pandemic, I was going through a religious deconstruction
Hmm.
and completely questioning what I had believed for almost 30 years on this planet and trying to figure out all of that. That caused a whole bunch of tension with
It's
my
devastating
family.
and its own grief.
Yes, right, exactly. Yeah. And then there was all this tension with my family because like we are different politically and we're, you know, like we are very vocal about the things that we believe and we like just had the most tense, horrible family like things and it was just and then my cat died. It was just a bad time.
Yeah.
It was just a bad time. And on top of all of that, I have this like crazy job that I'm trying to manage. So
A
I
lot
was
of
really
stress
so much
mounting.
stress, so much stress. And then it all came crashing down in the most unexpected way because I got injured and ended up in the hospital. And the injury itself was pretty traumatic. It was a dog attack, and I was in the hospital for a week, and then I had to spend um 40 hours inside a hyperbaric chamber, which is like this long, it kind of looks like, I don't know if you know what that is. It's like it kind of looks like that glass coffin that Snow White is in like,
Okay.
you know what I'm talking
That's
about? It's just a big clear,
phobic.
yeah, it's just a big clear tube that they roll you into and they seal you
No.
inside and then they pressurize it. And it's kind of like sending you down in a submarine, basically.
So
It's like
you're
that.
questioning your faith and just like
Yeah.
everything you believed,
Yeah.
and then you know, this is where oh, I like to say, like, you know, it's, I say it a little bit more off the cuff now, but in a way, yes, like some, you know, there, then, you know, divinity is like, hey, I'm going to give you this other challenge just to make
Mm,
sure you're really, you know, push it. Like, again, just like from the outside, it's so funny because where we came from the outside, if all these awful things are happening to you and you've left the church and, you know, it's like, oh, you know, what's going on? And, you know, she's definitely not doing
right.
it straight.
Right. I'm being punished. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But really what's happening is, you know, you're having an, I mean, not to say that had anything to do with it, that was just another, life happens on its own. So,
Yes.
you know, you can't, so, but there, you know, there is divine, you know, truths in this world and in our lives. And so while life happens on its own, we still have to grapple with our spirituality and our soul with the things that happen in life, you know, I guess. So each one can kind of like, does that make sense? Or am I going a little bit too?
No, I think I know what you're saying. Like, I mean, for me, I am an extremely tough person,
Hmm.
which has served me my whole life. You know, I've had to be an incredibly strong, independent person. I have, you know, my childhood, I've had to realize, you know, I had kind of a rose-colored view of it, and then you wake up to some things, then you realize, oh shit, like, you know, so all of that was happening at the same time too. Like I was really delving back into my history and just realizing as an adult, when I relive these memories as an adult who went to therapy, you just
Yeah.
start to gain a different perspective on things. And so, yeah, everything in my life was kind of like crashing together and putting all of this pressure on me. But like, it has to do that in order for me to change
Yeah.
because I'm
Yes.
just too
That's what I'm
fucking
getting
tough.
at. Yeah, like when we are faced with these things in life, just like when
Yeah,
we're making a mistake and having to, you know, face
yeah.
mistakes. Like when
And I
we,
fear, go
yeah.
ahead.
No, go
Well,
ahead. Go.
I fear that that can sometimes turn into that toxic positivity of like
Yes.
everything happens for a reason, so you shouldn't
Yeah.
feel sad if something happens to you, which is
Yeah.
like obviously bullshit. But
Yeah.
it's more just like,
Absolutely.
yeah, but it's more just like at some point it either rules your life or you move on, you know? And um I just so everything was on me, everything was crushing me. Um, but I did have, you know, people in my life that loved me. I wasn't alone. And I had 40 hours to sit in this tube.
Yeah,
And
I
it was,
guess
you
what
know,
I more mean is sometimes we're left with just ourselves.
yes. Yeah.
And that's more what I mean. It's not breaking you down to build you up and all that bullshit. Like I'm not,
Right.
yeah, no. It's just sometimes that is what we have is ourselves. We have
Yeah.
like we have to face ourselves. And you know, if we're lucky to have support, then we are a leg up than most people, a lot of people. So
Seriously.
that's the flip side of like you said, like I'm a tough person too, and I do have that mindset of like pull your britches
Yes.
up and
Uh-huh.
like, you know,
Right.
but at the same time, like when you know when you're left with yourself, the thing about that is you get to make like new choices
Right.
and answer some of those questions that you've been pondering for yourself. Like, yeah,
Yeah. It's crazy because, you know, well, I spent a lot of time that I was in the tube watching movies because they had like these movies, and I just watched like old things that were familiar, you know. So they're like there, but you're kind of watching, but not really. I was watching like Harry Potter, and I was watching a lot of um these movies, these classic movies that I love. Like Stardust is another one of my favorite movies. Um,
I'm gonna have to rewatch
And
that.
have you seen it? It is so good.
It's been
I
a long
just
time.
it is up there for me as like with The Princess Bride as maybe one of like the most perfect movies of all time. Like it's that level of just love it. Every bit of it. Um, but you know, all of the stories and all of these fantasy science fiction things that I love to read, these escapist things that I've been drawn to my whole life, you know, there's always the part of the story where the person finally is like, my life has to change and I'm the only person who can do it, you know? And I just never had anything that that I felt like was pulling me strongly enough to like make that change because I was stuck. I was stuck in a belief system, truly. I was stuck in a mindset that had been, you know, that I had been raised in that I hadn't fully confronted and said, is this actually what I believe? Is this actually the kind of person that I want to be? And if not, what does that mean for me? What choices do I have now? You know? And it was not anything big that pointed me to writing and editing. It was literally just I happened to be watching The Handmaid's Tale at around that time before that the accident happened. And I was thinking about that show and the main character, and she had been an editor in a previous in her previous life, and they kind of referenced that in the show a few times. I was like, oh yeah, like editing is like actually a job that people do and get paid for.
Isn't that
I
funny how
could get
this
paid
kind of
for
stuff
it.
dawns on you like as a 30-year-old something? You're like, oh, that's a job. Oh yeah, that's right. And like having kids, I immediately feel like I have to go tell my kids, hey, just want to let this is a job. I need to let you
Okay,
know that this is a job. Like
I literally, just as we're talking, I just unlocked a memory that I had forgotten. And now I need to beat somebody's ass. So I just remembered that when I was in community college, I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do, and I went and I talked to a guidance counselor, and I told them one of the things that I was interested in was editing. And this motherfucker, sorry, I don't know if swearing's allowed.
it's
Um,
it's loud.
okay, this motherfucker looked me in the eye and was like, well, that means you're just going to be sitting at a desk all day reading thousands and thousands of pages and never talking to anyone. Is that really what you want to do? Like dead ass. That's what he said to me. And I was like, okay, I
That's
guess
not at
not.
all what you do. Like
It's not all like in Boomerville 1975, but like it's just like that's not,
and
you know,
I'm
it was
to differ. Have you watched Little Women? Okay. She was not just she was in a home with strangers. Like,
he just made it sound like the worst thing ever and just okay, it's like okay, I guess that's a stupid idea. And I, you know, so yeah, that pisses me off now that I remembered that. But anyways, 10 years after that,
yes.
I figured out that that is actually what I wanted to do. And it was the kind of thing like once you're on the right you feel it, you just know it. And it was just like don't get me wrong, there were plenty of times where I was like, this is a terrible idea, and I still have that time all the time. I'm a baby. I've just barely started, you know, my career. Um, but I love it so much. I love the job. I love the people. I love the stories. It just feels like home. Like I remember so that happened to me. The accident was in July of 2021. And I by October had decided that I was going to do it. I had like gone from thinking about it to this is happening.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I took a couple classes and I begged a friend of mine, actually, my friend Jessica, Deshaka is her last name now.
Okay.
Um, you know her. Yeah, I
Yes.
begged her to let me edit her novel for her because I
Okay. And
wanted
I
the
need to actually talk to her about her novel because here's a fun story. Is me and her did a recording,
oh
but
yeah.
I'm actually glad it didn't release because it had a lot of she was one of the first people I recorded with.
Oh, okay.
And it was about her novel that she was writing, but it was very much in the beginning stages at that point.
Yeah.
So anyways, that is something, thank you for reminding me of that, because I want to circle back, but I wasn't sure if I lost touch with her, so I didn't keep up with if it was something that was still happening. So
Gotcha. Oh yeah, no, she finished it. And then she started getting married and,
yeah,
moving
yeah.
and doing all that fun stuff. But yeah, so I edited it for her and was like, "Yep, I definitely like this is good." And I went to a conference of editors of like freelancers just to, make some connections and see the thing. And it was just like, these are my people, like instantly. I am not a sociable person, and none of those people there are sociable people. And we could all talk to each other, like, because we were just on the same wavelength. So I met some great people there. Who if you listen to my podcast, I interview some of them on the show. And yeah, and that really sealed the deal for me. Like I was already sold, but like that was like, yep, I'm doing this. But I was still working at my other job. I still had bills to pay. So I was doing the super stressful project management job. I was recovering from my hospital stay, and I was trying to do this editing thing part-time, and there was other stuff going on in my life, and it was a lot.
This is
Um
what they need to share during if you're gonna go to college for like business administration, like honestly, like these are the stories they need to share, because most of the time you
yeah.
are working a full-time job while trying to accomplish whatever you're working on,
Yeah.
because
There's a
we live in a real
classic,
world.
right, exactly. And there's a classic Ron Swanson quote that like you should never whole ass or you should never half ass two things. You should whole ass one thing. That's literally impossible to do in our world. Like you can't,
Yeah.
you can't really, your attention and your priorities are constantly divided, right? But when you are trying to like really make a significant change in your life, like you just have so much less time, even more so. So it was draining. It was exciting and I was so happy with everything that I was doing, but I was hitting a wall. And um so in February of just this year of 2023, I quit my full-time job to start doing editing full time. Take the leap, and here I am. I also decided to move across the country at the same time
And you
because why
started a
not?
podcast.
And I started a podcast. Yes. Because I just everything has to happen at once, right? This is just the pace of my life right now.
This is how we do it. So
Yeah. Yeah,
one
all
thing I
together.
related to so much on your podcast that you talked about was talking about being able to like work on something really in a really focused, productive way for like 20 minutes and then getting bored. And I relate so much to that. That's the hardest part, I think, of my day job.
Yeah.
It's nice because it's predictable and I know what I'm going to do every day, and it is that steady income. And so I talk about my day job a lot on this podcast and kind of like talk about the woes of it, but I honestly am so grateful for it. Like, is it
Yeah.
the easiest thing to do? No, I'm not going to say it is. I'm not going to say I love it or enjoy it either. That would be a lie. But
Right.
I can say all those things and have a lot of gratitude. So for
Yes.
having it.
Absolutely.
So, but like with that though, that is one of the harder parts of my job, and why I love even just the media world, the creative world, the writing world, um acting, improv, anything like that, because it really is so diverse, and
Hmm.
so I don't get bored.
Oh yeah, no, for sure. That's what I love about my job too is like I have edited memoir and I have edited pirate novels and I have done like fantasy, romance, dark fairy stuff. And I love getting to see the different ways that people use writing to express themselves and really get out something true about them, you know? It's just such a powerful tool for that. And it's like, in some ways it feels like my native, like, form of that form of creativity, you know? Um, so it's just always fascinating to me, not just what the story is, but what it reveals about the person who's trying to tell the story, you know?
Yes. Yeah. That struck me too, because I heard you talked about like, and you didn't go in depth, but you talked about the big questions of sci-fi.
Mm.
And I don't want to, make it sound like you only do sci-fi, because you talked about editing children's books and young adult um book, books,
Yeah.
romance, like you said, you wrote for a corporate job, so you know how to edit
Yes.
corporate material. So, but on that note that you were just saying, I was super curious because um having your background, where you grew, like how you grew up, the world you grew up in, and it sounds like you were always probably curious about those big questions in life, but weren't maybe able to ask them to yourself out loud yet for a very long time, which
Hmm.
is very normal.
Yeah.
It's very normal. But so that really, for some reason, stuck with me when you said the big questions of sci-fi, because it seemed like your young self was like wanting to know more.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I have always been, well, there's kind of this trope. It's like when people talk about a child being an old soul, and it's like the secret is they were traumatized.
Yes. Yeah,
Like,
I
I'm
know.
sorry.
Especially when a guy is like, you've got an old, so I'm like, and you're gonna manipulate me.
Yeah, like, so true. Like, yeah, this depth, it's haunting.
Yeah, you
Um,
see these dark circles? Yes, I'm Hispanic and Latin, and there's hyperpigmentation, but yes, I also have trauma.
oh
Sorry.
my God, I don't even remember what we were talking about.
Okay, we're talking about the big questions of
Oh, the
life and sci-fi.
big questions of life. Yes, I've always been drawn to those. But you have to remember too, like, C.S. Lewis and Tolkien and kind of all the Christian authors even that I was exposed to early on were extremely philosophical. They were taking a Christian perspective and they were kind of trying to ask and answer those questions in Christian ways. Um, but you get even just getting the demonstration of like, oh, like, what does it mean to be a hero? What does it mean to be good? You know, what does it, like, what is our ultimate responsibility to each other, and to the people that we care about? And those things always have always permeated the stuff that I'm drawn to. And I don't know why that is. I mean, other than I will say that I have a lot of thoughts and critiques and criticisms of the religion I was raised in, the church I was raised in, and the kind of overall um, culture. But I did feel I am not one of those people who looks back and feels like I never connected with anything. I think there is something that I connected with through that form of spirituality.
Mhm.
There was an opening made there for
Same.
me.
I can relate
And
to. Yeah.
yeah,
So I feel
and
grateful again. While I can
yeah,
have
right,
critiques, I can have gratitude.
right. And there's kind of a pipeline of like former evangelicals who kind of had that charismatic or that kind of emotional experience who then go straight to the woo woo hyper, tarot and astrology and rocks and crystals. And I'm totally guilty of that too. Like, I'm not
Yeah.
throwing shade. I have like five
Yeah.
tarot decks. I didn't buy them. They were given to
I
me.
have, like, yeah, I don't really limit myself. If I
Yeah.
feel it's not what I feel, what I feel. I don't mean it
Yeah.
like that. I mean,
Right.
I'm a whole person and I have my own intuition
Right.
and, and hey, if I, through my own intuition, want to use a tool, whether it be a podcast, whether it be a deck, whether it be meditation, whether
Right.
I guess what, I'm allowed to do that.
Which is again is a value that I feel like was taught to me as part of the way that we were raised, like as a part of the religion, was that God can speak to you through a song, God can speak to you through a stranger, God can speak to you through
See,
like,
I felt the opposite. I felt those things were allowed, but like anything that even tapped into any other form of spirituality or organized
yes,
religion is not okay.
right. That's exactly it. It's always there is freedom within this box. Free,
Right.
like God can do anything because God's so powerful, but he can't protect you if you use a tarot deck
Yeah.
because
Yeah,
and he certainly can't speak.
lady, what you doing?
No, and what I find fascinating about like tarot and astrology and honestly, it just kind of opened my mind in religion in general is like how much of it is like you get out of it what you put into it, you know? If you really believe that tarot is helping you and it makes your life better, it's not hurting anybody, so it's
No, and
fine.
I'd much rather have you interpret something for yourself rather than what we experienced, which I totally am not like. I don't. Again, this could be a whole other podcast, and I don't really care what Do your own research and do what works for you, but
Yeah.
like, but I would much rather you pull a card from a deck and interpret for yourself rather than have somebody speak over you, speak to you, say what you should do because they heard it from God. That's
Yeah.
bullshit.
Yeah, I mean, it literally is like if you go like to a tarot reader, like, and they give you a reading, they're saying like, this is my interpretation of what these cards mean. Like that is the totality of the exchange. And when you go to, or at least this style of, religion that we were raised in is this is what this means, and this is how you have to behave because of what this means. And if you deviate outside of that, then something bad is going to happen to you and you deserve it.
Mm-hmm.
Like that was the message that was like very hardcore like drilled into me. um but yeah, it's just this weird thing because it is, it's like I still find that I can find that connection anywhere. Definitely I did find it in the church at some times, but I have found it in many places outside
And
of
with
the church.
specific people, I don't,
Yeah.
again, like we're humans, and that's why I've have forgiveness. I've done my own forgiving that I need to do. I do believe in forgiveness because there are certain things that are, I think, true in life. And,
Yeah.
you know, um, and, and yeah, it's just kind of interesting, I think sometimes when you're, I guess, when what you've finding your way, if it maybe goes down a path that maybe family or close friends don't expect. One thing I have told my kids is don't be afraid to disappoint me,
Ooh, wow.
because it's not my job to approve of. Now, look, I have common sense. I'm not going to raise a bunch of assholes. Like,
Right.
I'm going to do my best not to do that.
Yeah.
But when it comes to when they are entering adulthood, or even I have a 12-year-old, even that for those formative years, they're really forming their identity,
Mm.
and I may not always agree or like, what how they what they choose. Now, as long as they're not hurting themselves or others, making destructive decisions, like that's when as a parent, it's your job to step in. But if they're not doing that, then, you know, you kind of have to guide and be there, but then also give them that freedom, you know. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that's something that we didn't have, you know, as
Yeah.
much. And that's you know, finding your way, it's never too late to do that, you
Yeah.
know. So I'm really happy that you, like, I've seen you change. I think we've all seen each other change so
Yeah.
much, yet stay
Yeah.
the same. Like, you're still the same Kara that I remember growing up in all the best ways. I feel
Thanks.
like I just know you better now, you know, and know a little
It's
bit more of
probably
who you are.
it's probably for the best that you know me now. I mean, like, like my friend Jess that we talked about, like, we were not friends when I was a kid. And I didn't really have, like, I had friends for a certain period of time and then I kind of lost them all. Like, I had a lot of difficulty making like lasting relationships when I was a kid. And part of that was like the homeschooling, and part of it was just me. Like, I just was a socially awkward person and I needed a lot of help that I wasn't getting.
I think that's
So,
really encouraging for anybody who is like a natural editor and writer and kind of has even maybe just a similar background, because it sounds like your project management job and some of these other experiences that you had to go through to get to where you are now helped you with building learning how to build those relationships. And, you know, even if maybe somebody isn't um, from that same, you know, from your background of feeling a little more, I don't want to say introverted, because I never really saw you as introverted. You seem like you spoke your mind, you know, what your mind, you know, so
well, it turns out uh, that might just be my brain.
which that's okay. That's how
Being a touch on the neurospicy side.
I
So
was gonna say, yeah. I mean,
but
I also
yeah,
suffer from the same thing. I put my foot in my mouth all the time. So,
yeah, and like I just I am an introvert. I am
okay.
very much an introvert.
Yeah.
I have to spend time alone and I have a lot of social anxiety. Um, but I always loved performing, and which doesn't really make sense. But there's a difference when it's like there's that separation between you and the audience, right?
Yeah.
Versus when you're trying to have like a conversation with somebody that you don't know, which is what I struggle with. Um, and I think that specifically the job where I was like training people was like perfect to help me marry this skill of performance with like, oh, I'm essentially performing in this role of this trainer as I'm interacting with these people. And that somehow that taking on of the role allows me to overcome my more like general social anxieties. Um, and it doesn't work all the time, but it's really funny because I've asked myself sometimes, like, why am I able to do things sometimes for like a job, like when it's my job to do it, like I'm totally fine with being rude to people. Um, but like, or like talking to strangers, like, when it's my job, but if it's not, and it's like, well, like I'm fine with doing it for other people. I just struggle to do it for myself.
Yeah, but I think
You know?
you seems like you're, like you said, you're pushing yourself though. And
Yeah.
so even, yeah, and even just getting to know people's stories, you know, that's, even though, so I'm extroverted, but I can really relate to what you're saying with the performing aspect, because while I'm extroverted, you know, I really learned to be that. I am naturally extroverted, but I also learned to be that kind of way because we moved around so much growing up.
Hmm.
So, you know, I think you go one way or another. You know, you just kind of,
Yeah.
you know, you're kind of programmed in like DNA, like you're programmed to go a certain way, I think, to some degree. And But, I found that really worked for me as a coping mechanism.
Hmm.
But what that also meant is that I did take on certain, I guess, I was always myself. So I really kind of, I don't want it to come off like I was fake a lot or anything like that, but I just really took my personality in whatever group I was in and kind of like whatever part of myself could mesh with that, that's what I tapped into, you
Which
know.
is which is very human. Like that's what we do. Like some people are social chameleons and we're just better about presenting like different aspects of ourselves. And I struggled with that for a while because it is this idea of like, am I being two-faced because I'm this way with this group or this way with that group? And I remember I would get especially aggravated with the church because like our group, everybody in our age group from like, gosh, like my oldest brother who's in his 40s now, like him on down, cussing, drinking, smoking pot,
Yeah.
sleeping around, all, like all of that was
Yeah, I
happening.
remember one guy I dated from church asked me a question and we were it was a youth night. We were in the elevator and I just started like we were flirting, and you would know this person and oh my God. Well, we would know both these people. And I just in the elevator, like I knew this person fooled around. Like I wasn't stupid, like I knew that this
Mm.
person was not like a virgin. And he had the audacity in the elevator ask me if I was a virgin, if I had ever slept with anybody. Because it's something he needed to know before he was going to date me. And I gave him an
Oh,
answer
gross.
because at that age, like,
Oh,
I don't know, like I didn't have the powerful no that I have now. But,
right, right, right.
but yeah, just exactly what you're saying, just double standards and just all sorts of
Yeah, yeah. And
like,
so
yeah, just like, yeah,
when you're talking,
I
yeah, when you're
struggle
talking
with
about
that
like,
one.
yeah, so from the very beginning, it's basically like we're presenting one person who you are with your friends, and you're presenting a different version of who you are to the church at large, because we have to not piss off the old people, so we can't, I remember one time, uh, Ethan, my brother Ethan, was making an announcement from the pulpit, and he said something about um a buttload. He was like saying we're gonna have a buttload of fun or something stupid like that. And the pastor got complaints from people in the audience because he had used the word buttload. It was like that level of like petty shit that we were dealing with. So like of course all of these repressed hormonal teenagers and
Exactly.
20-year-olds are like fucking around and like doing random shit. And I didn't participate in
And all
any of
that
that. Like,
stuff, nothing's said about.
yeah, no, yeah, exactly.
We don't acknowledge that.
Like, I've been to worship practices where people were drinking, like, they had Chick-fil-A cups full of lemonade and vodka. It was just like the Wild West. I'm
See, I
telling
was
you.
blind to a lot of this stuff. Like, I mean, I knew some stuff. I knew my own. I knew what I needed to know. Let's just say that.
Yeah.
So we
And
went
I
there
don't
long
say,
enough to know.
yeah. And I don't say any of that to say, like,
Yeah,
like those
I
are
don't
bad
care.
things to
Like, I
do.
don't freaking care at
Yeah,
all.
all of that's fine. It's just like the pious, like, well, but then we're gonna like throw you out of the church because you're like sleeping, you're like living with your boyfriend or like whatever bullshit thing that they, whatever. Um, but yeah, so I think this kind of whole like this discomfort with this idea of being a different version of yourself can come from that of this idea of you feel like you're being deceitful, right? You feel like you're deliberately hiding portions of yourself. But I've kind of come to a different perspective on that, where it's not that you're hiding, it's that nobody has a like fundamental right to all of you.
Right.
You are allowed, you should be authentic when you can and when it is safe for you to do so. I think that trying to be a full authentic person is healthy, is a
Yeah.
good way to be. But no one is owed your full anything, right?
Yeah.
Especially in like a work situation or in, like these social relationships. Like, you don't have to tell anybody anything about you. You don't have to explain
Absolutely.
yourself. Like, it's okay. And
Yeah. This
um
translates beyond anywhere you go, like your job,
yes,
and one thing too, that if anybody does struggle with feeling, safe in certain areas, maybe you don't have the luxury of not being at a certain place, and so you have
right.
to tap into your own a certain aspect of yourself, or tolerate certain people. Just know that you can create your own safety. And so start with, am I
Yes.
open to creating my own safety? Like, so just in yourself, if you can start to ask yourself and wonder if you can open yourself to creating your own safety as an adult, then that also, I would say, is a next step to being, on your way to like not feeling like shit completely after, having to be around somebody, still feeling like you have some choice and empowerment in the situation.
Yeah, that's so huge. And it just takes you a long time to find the right balance to where you can feel like I am being authentic here, but I don't have to reveal my whole self, and that's okay, and that's not deceitful. That's just being me. That's what I'm allowed to do. Um, I am very conscious of how I am, like, of people perceiving me, which I think a lot of women are, right? It's like this constant feeling of you're being monitored somehow. Um, and I really struggle with containing my facial expressions. So that has really forced me to be honest, I think, over the years. Because people know what I think anyway, because I cannot control my facial expressions whatsoever. COVID was a godsend, at least in that respect, not in any other respect.
My favorite
But
thing to do was to put on the mask and some sunglasses. Oh, and I'd walk in the store with the
oh
sunglasses because I was
God,
the least crazy looking person at that time, with just
right,
some sunglasses and a mask. The
right,
least.
yeah, right.
So, I loved
Yeah,
it.
it was. There's something very freeing and empowering about it, about feeling like I'm not under observation here. Um
But I
and
did have to learn to be vulnerable again, because I'm like, okay, I
yeah.
can't hide. I had to go through the whole COVID, I
Yeah,
guess apocalypse of self.
right.
I
Mm-hmm.
guess I can't hide from the world. I have to face it. Like,
So stupid. Like, I am hiding is the best. Like, that's
I know
that's the
it
nice
feels
thing
so
about
good.
being an editor is like a lot of my job I'm like hiding in a cave.
Yeah. Well,
Um
what's the cool thing about kind of what we were just kind of talking about? I didn't mean to like go into too down that far, but it was good because it totally relates to editing, and just when you're going through somebody's story, you just have that ear for it. You really
mhm.
know how to dissect and listen. And it seems like you've learned to like be vulnerable in that, and kind of really go deep into other people's stories, which is really awesome. And I probably makes you a better writer for yourself even.
Oh yeah. I don't know, I hope so. I've never published anything. I write for myself out of joy and out of my own like um also exposing all of my vulnerabilities through art as one does.
But I
I
don't
don't
know about
remember.
you. I still like look at my stuff because I write songs, and I
Uh-huh.
write too, but I kind of feel like I know when I've hit like some sort of growth. I'm like, okay, I grew a little bit here.
Yeah, there's some level up happening.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's great. So I'm writing. I don't remember. Did we talk about my writing at all last time?
No. Mm-mm.
So I'm writing a book right now, and I'm about halfway through it, and I like it. I really enjoy the concept and where it's going, and I like the characters. Um, but I'm the type of writer who doesn't really plot out. I prefer to just kind of write and then go back and edit and rearrange because I'm a very good editor. I don't know if you know that. Um,
Yeah, well, so far for the like, I personally didn't. I love, I love just yeah. I think you are a great editor. No, I love hearing sides of people that I just never knew. Like I
oh
never
yeah,
knew this side of you. I mean, I always knew you were into books, like,
yeah,
and reading and things like that. Like in long stories at your age, I envied anybody who could sit down and read a book. The Audible didn't exist at that time.
yeah, right, true.
I wasn't really going to I mean, I went to the library sometimes to get tapes, but I usually just rented out or checked out music like CDs and stuff like that. So I leaned towards music for a lot of my storytelling, and
Yeah.
TV shows.
Which I
um
love. I've learned a lot about storytelling from songwriters too, because it's kind of like poetry. You are telling a story, you're just using a different medium. And I love to get inspired by story because we're all telling a story, right? We're all before social media even existed. Like we were using art to try and scream our feelings into the universe. Like that's just what we do. That's what humans do. Um, and yeah, like I said, like writing is just like my native language for that. So I'm writing this novel, and I didn't know what it was going to be about, other than like a very, very broad. I had a character and I had a location, and I kind of had a few other characters, and I had like the setting. And I was like, all right, let's start writing and see what happens. And 17 chapters in, I've realized that I'm using this book to process my religious trauma and my relationships with my siblings.
I love
So
it.
that's fun. That's great. Um,
This is sounding oddly familiar. Like,
but this is weird. Like I had no idea when I started this, but the entire heart of the story is this brother-sister relationship that is like directly built off of my relationship with my brothers. And it has this whole religious aspect to it, which you can get away with because it's a sci-fi. But like my character is not religious. My character is like a stranger to this religion and is coming to it from an outsider perspective. So I'm getting to live
oh, you're getting the
essentially,
bird's eye view.
yes, I'm getting to like approach like person who was never raised with religion, which is an experience that I do not have, but I'm getting to imagine like this is a person who has never encountered a religion before, suddenly encountering a religion. What does that look like? And what does that, how does this person interact with it? So, and I had no idea that that's what the story was going to be about when I started it, but that's just the power of art. That's just the power of
Yeah.
really tapping in and really getting free and getting, allowing yourself to get to that point, is that it will take you. There's so much going on in here that we don't understand,
Yeah.
and there's so much processing happening. We're also, obsessed with AI and all of that like stuff, which is great. I love technology. I'm not anti any of that, but like the most incredible like thing to me is how we're able to process everything in this world through this like meat sack in here. And so yeah, and writing just, it's just like, damn, I didn't know that was in there. That's cool. Like,
Yeah.
oh, that's in there. That's cool. Um,
Well, and it's going
so
to
that's
bring, I think, a whole new level to your editing, and it's nice to, I think, for anybody who is writing right now and working on something, it's nice to just hear how you broke down that process for yourself and
mm-hmm,
how you started,
yeah.
and so like for anybody who is struggling in that way, what are three things? Maybe they just have an idea. What are three
Uh-huh.
things that they can do to expand that idea?
In terms of writing something,
Right. Because
or
you talked about a character, a
yes.
location. So, like,
That's
what are
okay.
three things they can do to expand?
Yes.
whatever
Great question. Okay. So you have to have a setting, right? Where is this where is this story happening? It can be as simple as a room, it can be inside of a car, or it can be an entire new galaxy that you're exploring, right? It doesn't really matter, but you have to decide where this is taking place. And if it's a real place or a fake place, you have to kind of have the same amount of information. So if it's a fake place, you got to make stuff up. If it's a real place, you got to research. So, pick. So that's your setting. Um, then you have to put people in that setting. And you can start with people and then put them in the setting, but you have to make sure that the people in the setting go together and
Mhm.
and be thinking about what is the relationship between these people and where they live and how does that shape who they are, right?
Okay.
We are shaped by our environment. Human beings are we cannot develop independent of where we are, right? So
Yep.
you have to think about that, not with your characters, and also like the larger group of people that they're part of, right? Like their country or their clan or whatever the group is that they're part of. So you've got a setting and you've got some people. um those people need to want something, and they need an obstacle that is preventing them from getting it.
Okay.
Ideally, they're going to have a lot of obstacles, but
Yeah.
but you can start with just the first one. My character, the obstacle that she starts with is she wants to go somewhere and her father figure doesn't want to let her go. Already you have conflict starting, okay? How is she going to get there? Why does he want to stop her? What is he going to do to stop her? What is she going to do to get around him?
Yeah.
So
How do
that's what
their
you
setting and experiences affect all that?
Yeah. And sometimes, the character doesn't want anything at first, and then something happens to them and they get pulled onto this journey, whether they want it to happen or not. But the character always has to want something, and the story is whatever is getting in the way of them getting what they want. And sometimes at the end of the story, they get what they want. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes they don't get what they want, but they get what they need. There's a variety of different ways. But yeah, getting started, you need a place, you need people in that place, and you need those people to want things, and then just let them play.
I love that. I love that. That is awesome. And just the way, even when I called you to help with, getting the podcast on other, or when we set up that time to, help with getting the podcast on other platforms, you're really good at breaking things down. You're really good at taking things
Thank
step
you.
by step. You're really good at being very straightforward and practical. And so I think for anybody creative, those are important things. Um,
Yes.
because a lot of times we can help somebody else do that, but then doing it for ourselves is like, yeah, right. So,
Well, and every writer needs an editor, even an editor who is also a writer. Like,
yeah. I was gonna say, do you have an editor?
I mean,
Yeah.
I have, yeah, well, I have been edited before. I don't have an editor right now for this current book because it's not done yet. But when it's done, I'm going to have people edit. I'm going to have people read it and get feedback and all that because like, the crazy thing is like, I could be a pretty not great writer and still be a good editor. I am a good writer, but um editing and writing are related skills, but they are not identical skills.
Yeah.
And that
One doesn't require the other.
yeah, exactly. And you can be a great writer and a terrible editor, like that's just everybody needs that outside perspective on the work. And the skill is really being able to communicate what needs to be changed in a way that the person understands it and doesn't feel like their whole world is falling apart.
Right.
And it's because we are dealing with people's stories, right? We're not dealing with, oh, you can't figure out how to get this podcast up. Like that is just a technical thing that we just have to work through. When you're dealing with somebody's novel that is their baby that they have worked away on for the past 5 years, and you're telling them they have to cut that character because they don't make sense, whew, you,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
have to have such a delicate touch.
Yes.
Um,
You feel
but
like a part of yourself that is
yes,
being,
and
yeah.
yes. And that's why my editing business name is Midwrite, because it's like mid-right, like midwife, but instead of like for the babies, it's for the stories. Like,
Yes. And that's the
um,
exact approach you take, though. That's
yeah,
exactly the feeling I get from you. Just knowing you, you're
yeah.
very attentive. I think I mentioned this last time, but I like to mention it every time because it's so special and sweet, and it just shows the attention to detail and the care that you give to
Oh,
people.
yeah.
And like for your birthday, you made everybody their own individual name tags for your birthday party, and you base it off their personality, and it shows exactly you put the action behind what you're saying,
Yeah.
so
Yeah. And it took me a long time to figure out how to do those kinds of things and to find space for them and to realize like this is what relationship building is, like that in itself is a skill, and it takes a lot of time. And I just am a crafty person in general, so it wasn't, that was a fun thing for me to do. Um, but you're not the only one who has told me that, they still have that and that they keep it somewhere. And that really made an impact on me too, because it was like, oh, I was just doing this as like a silly kind of like thing because all these people don't know each other and I want them to be able to know each other. And I'm just really extra, so I have to go the extra step. But it really did like, it was surprising to me how much it meant to people that even just that like half an hour that I spent, putting that together. And it made me realize like, man, like it really is actually easy to connect with people. It's just hard to take that step. Like,
Mhm.
like people just want to feel like they are seen, but not in like a judged way. Like,
Yeah, intrusive or yeah.
yeah. And it's
Mhm.
very, very hard to do that. But I do think that that is a, yeah, yeah. But
I'm
I
not
feel like I
always
work on that
perfect.
a lot.
Well, honestly, like I struggle, still.
Yeah.
So.
Of course. Like and it's just a human thing. And we also like we all go through times where we just don't have the time or the energy to be like, I can't maintain relationships right now. I need
Yeah.
to be
Yep.
alone.
Yep.
You too, the
That's
people
one
that
of
you
my
love will,
boundaries. Like one
yeah.
thing I do is like I don't have any of my notifications turned on for any
Oh
app.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
like I don't get notifications about anything because it really pulls me away. I'm so easily distracted and I'm gonna go
Yeah.
stuck on it. And I don't want to care that much because I don't. I care about my life where I'm presently at and in the moment. That's what I care about.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, same for sure. It would drive me nuts because I'm one of those people that I can't have any notifications on my phone. I have to like clear them out.
Yeah.
So if I had notes, oh my gosh, I can't even imagine.
Yeah. So where can people go if they are interested in getting, editing services? I know you also do different types of just like consultation. So, what kind of services do you offer and where can
Sure.
people go to get those services or get
So
information?
yeah, so you can go to my website. It's midwrite.com, which is MIDWRITE. So just midwrite.com. And I have a services page there you can kind of read through. But I do developmental edits, which are like the big picture story edits. I do line editing, which is more about grammar and structure and word choice and things like that. And I also offer a coaching service, which is for either unfinished pieces or very short pieces or things that maybe you want to get like a read on, but you're not ready to commit to like a full in-depth edit. You want more of like a general overview. So the coaching service is great because it's really flexible. It's just based on the word count and it starts at like $100 for anything under 5,000 words. And so you get a editorial letter where I'll talk about the strengths and weaknesses of the piece And you'll also get like a writing assessment where I'll say like, you need to work on this, or you could read a book about writing dialogue, or you could, so I'll give you a personalized assessment based on the piece that you give me to help you grow your writing, as well as give you like general thoughts about the piece as well. So I started doing that just as a way to make sure that if you need editing services, but you can't afford like the big editing packages, which I totally get, like I still want to be able to like offer you some help if you need it. Um, so that you can find all that on my website, midwrite.com. You can also check out my podcast. It's called the Edibuddies Podcast. It's on my website, it's on Spotify, it's on Google, it's on Apple, it's on all the things. And I just released my 6th episode, which is about sci-fi fantasy, which is what I do. And it is an episode about me. So I talk even more about myself. But I do have other episodes that are not about me. And I'm really excited about it. I've got more episodes planned. I've got a comic book editor who's going to be on my next episode, which is not a world I know anything about. So yeah, I'm really excited about that. Yeah, and that's it. And then
I
you can
love
follow me on
graphic
Instagram.
novel art so much.
Oh,
Especially,
do you?
I love it, love it, love it. Especially vintage. I just loved, yeah, I love it. There's a place called Metropolis. It's on the way to Georgia. I don't know what city it's in, or what state, I mean. The city is
Okay.
Metropolis, but they have like a vintage comic book store there.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I bought the kids a few. I definitely was buying it for my like self as a child, but I was like, here, you guys want these right now. but but no, so I'll definitely have to tune into that one because
Yeah. I did not know that about you. That's so interesting. You never met my fiance, David, have you? Oh, I guess you
one
saw him.
I think
You met him once,
twice, but
maybe
definitely
twice.
once at the garage sale. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I mean, he's hugely into comics and graphic art and all that kind of stuff. So that's really funny. Huh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm excited about that. And then yeah, just check me out. I don't know. Send me an email. I do free consultations for everybody too. So like anybody who wants to just chat with me for 20 minutes, like we can do that for sure.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for taking time again. We went longer
of
this
course.
time. I didn't want to stop it, so I'll just have a longer episode. I don't really have
Okay.
a set time. So, I mean, I try to keep it at an hour. That's my goal. But I
Gotcha.
love what we talked about. So,
Me too.
honestly, you gave me so much insight into who you are both these times. I feel like I've just like gotten to know you on a deeper level, and you've helped me with my podcast, so I appreciate that too.
You're so welcome.
And
I can't.
I just can't wait to see, not to sound like make a dumb pun, but like the next chapter.
Thank you. Me too. I can't wait to turn the page.
I just have to flip through and
Yeah.
I'm gonna stop now. Okay. All right.
Oh my gosh. It's so good to talk to you, Raquel. And seriously, I hate that this has been so one-sided. I want to like have a similar like deep dive into your life at some point.
At first I was like really hesitant about that, but I literally was just telling my counselor that I've been like itching to talk. I don't know, just say it, just to say it out loud.
Yeah.
Whatever it is, just so I
Yeah.
am happy to sit down and chat. I have a few ideas brewing too that we'll have to like maybe like see if we can follow through on, but that'll be later. So maybe
Okay.
we'll have to just keep scheduling times, because I will say
Yeah.
this, I am bad at like spontaneous calls. I have to have it on the calendar.
No, I love scheduling time. Like by all means, let's do it.
So neurotic. All right.
Sounds great.
Good night.
Yeah, good night.